We'll get underway. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Frederick Winsness, and I am with NetHope and the NetHope Solutions Center. We want to welcome everyone to another webinar in our Solutions Center webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's quite important in these COVID-19 days, continuing education without continuous connectivity. And we are very pleased to have Ustad Mobile and VSO, or Volunteer Services Overseas, with us today. Before we get started, we're going to go over a little bit of housekeeping rules. We do want to make this as interactive as possible, so please open the chat window in your Zoom interface. You do that by clicking the chat icon on the bottom of your screen, and use that to submit your questions or commentary, and we will facilitate a Q&A session towards the end of the hour today. We are recording this session, and you'll find all the materials and the recording posted to the NetHope Solutions Center later on today, and you'll see an email with follow-up and instructions on how to get there. And we'll also post that link to the chat window throughout the session today. And you will see a webinar satisfaction poll pop up on your browser when we're done with the session today. So we certainly appreciate you taking a minute or two to complete that. That will help us improve this series of webinars as we go forward. So with that, excuse me, I want to introduce the speakers today. We have Mike Dawson that is coming to us from Dubai today. He is the CEO of Ustad Mobile. And we have Purna Shrestha. He's the education lead at VSO International. And we're very, very pleased to have you both. And I know you have a lot of very, very interesting information and practices to share. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Thank you to the NetHope team. I'm just going to start sharing the presentation here. Just one moment. And here we go. I think everybody should now be able to see that. So good evening, good morning, or whatever it is, wherever you are in the world. At least this is one series of activities that we can all continue together. I'll just briefly introduce ourselves. Ustad Mobile is a social enterprise based here in the United Arab Emirates. We work on improving equity in education through technology. And we'll get into the exact details of how we do that just in a few slides. We are grateful to many partners, and we also want to particularly call out Expo Live, which is a part of the Dubai World Expo 2020, which will be Expo 2021, as far as we know now, who have helped fund the open source, open education resources offline content library that is part of what we're going to show you here. So far, this map shows roughly where some of our main projects and users are in the region here. So we have got active projects going on in Lebanon and Jordan, in Afghanistan and Bangladesh at the moment. You might not have heard of us before, but you may well have heard of our partners like Voluntary Service Overseas. Some of the functionality has been supported and used in projects by the National Rescue Committee, USAID, and Dubai Cares. So we have an app now that we'd like to show you and tell you a little bit about. Unfortunately, screen sharing didn't work perfectly with the Android emulator, we absolutely invite you to go onto the Android App Store if you have an Android phone in your hand, and you can just put Ustad Mobile into Google Play, and you can get this app right now. So this is our open educational resources library that works offline. We have got more than 70,000 open education resources from some of the most popular providers ready to use offline right now for free, and you can just go and download it on almost any Android phone. That includes African storybooks, the Global Digital Library, Khan Academy, and in our Khan Academy collection includes all of what you would find on Khan Academy, both the exercises and the videos. As far as we know, our app is the only way to use a Khan Academy exercise offline on Android. We have physics simulators, storybooks, and all kinds of stuff. So we'd say, go and check it out. That can be used to do distance learning with intermittent connectivity right away. We also have a very unique phone-to-phone offline content sharing system that we're going to show you here, or going to explain anyway. So, some of you guys might have seen some other offline content sharing solutions before, or used these things. Systems like KA Lite, eGranary, Calibri, and these kinds of things. And in these systems, you would normally put a little Raspberry Pi or a little small mini server and a Wi-Fi point, in a library or somewhere. And everybody would come and connect to this offline network. And as long as they were connected to this offline network, they could use the content. Of course, that requires users to meet up together to access the content, which is not really so practical these days, doesn't work so well anymore, unfortunately. And a more general problem, even going back to however many years it was before we had COVID-19, we lose count now, the users can't take the content with them when they leave, because unfortunately, not everybody has a smartphone, but a lot of people are getting smartphones. So it's very unfortunate if one has an offline educational content system that doesn't allow people to take content back home with them when they leave. So we thought we should change this a little bit. So our system is based directly on Android phones. There is no extra equipment required at all. There's no Raspberry Pi. There's no offline Wi-Fi network. It's just from one phone to another phone. Pardon. And I think we should remember that Android phones these days are more powerful than what we used to call a small office server or a small business server. So the phones are absolutely capable of acting as servers to, 10, 20, 30 other devices around. Now, of course, the natural question is, well, how is this useful in the context of COVID-19 when we can hardly meet anyone? Well, there's two answers to that. Firstly, when you have multiple devices within a household, this means that one person can download it and then they can share it around. As many people have seen, internet services are under pressure in many places around the world. So this can help reduce the amount of downloads that are needed. And it also just makes things easier if you want to, share it with somebody else. You can share it, with around 20 meters of distance between you, which hopefully should be more or less safe enough if you want to, interact with the neighbor or something like this. Our system works on practically any Android phone from about the last 5 years. Basically, any phone that runs Android 5 or better supports the offline sharing system. And it uses a combination of Bluetooth Low Energy and Wi-Fi Direct. I'm a software developer by background. I'm trying to mostly speak English on this presentation. Essentially, we use Bluetooth to find the other phones that are around nearby. And then when it comes time to actually transfer content, a Wi-Fi connection is created directly from one phone to another phone. So that's what we do for offline sharing. We have a bunch of other technology which is baked in to make the experience as fluid as possible, even in resource and bandwidth limited contexts. We do a lot of compression on content. Our content is on average about half to 1/3 of the size of downloading it from the original publisher. We also have a system that eliminates duplicates. So if you have like the same pictures inside multiple storybooks, our system can figure that out. And finally, the app has built-in support for saving to a memory card. So if you're running out of space on your phone, and Google reckons that happens to about 1 out of 3 people visiting the Google Play Store on India on a daily basis, you can actually save your content to the memory card, and thus you won't have to use the phone on, you won't have to use your device memory to save content necessarily. And finally, the app is actually optimized for limited memory devices. Alrighty, so let's go to the next one. So that's the Open Educational Resources Library, but particularly in the context of COVID-19, we want to step back and remember that we are content broadcast is not the entirety of education. There are social processes involved, feedback between educators and learners. So what we want to do is enable people to communicate in the classes and groups that they had before. Now, what we have done for this is we created a system whereby organizations can get their own workspace. So, an organization workspace allows you to create your own content like VSO has done, which they're going to talk about soon. It can allow you to set up your own classes, to set up your own teachers so that teachers have logins. Teachers can then assign content to students. So this is a new feature which we're really excited about. And then teachers will be able to record feedback and grades and get a quick overview of the progress of different students on a particular content assignment. And this is a system that's set up to allow feedback to go back and forth between a teacher and their students, and it works even with asynchronous and unreliable connections to the internet. When a student's progress is done, it gets logged locally. If and when a connection comes back, that is automatically synchronized. The user does not have to come back to the app. We have integrated with Android so that as soon as the phone is connected within 5 minutes, that synchronization will just happen automatically without any need for other user interaction. So try and make that as seamless as possible. And when we go back to going to school, which we hope is really, really, really soon, the app does have an attendance tracking feature. that allows us, the teacher, to log the attendance of their class, manage the students in that class, and then the reports can flow up through the organization, so you can eliminate the need for copying and pasting a whole bunch of Excel sheets. Alrighty. So I'd like now to hand it over to Perna at VSO.
Thank you very much, Mike. As Mike alluded, and I also see some of the questions from the participants, and in our case, we have developed our own resources for the first of all, we used the VSO school app, which is also built on Ustad Mobile. And in this case, you can see the example. This is the VSO on your left-hand side. There are lots of courses. So Learn to Sign is in Nigeria, so that's a sign language. Math Games at Home is something, again, you can download from Google. VSO School, if you type VSO School, and you will find these applications and you can have access. The first one, we piloted and developed this for the refugee settings where the Rohingya children in Bangladesh. And now you will have lots of other courses. So the Numeracy for All, this is also the whole package of videos, content with the low resource settings where there are no resources. So these are aimed for teachers. But then on your right-hand side, you can see BG Ants. Again, this is an open source from Pratham books, and that has been translated into Rohingya language and as well as Burmese language. And then you will also see now we have started updating and creating resources for COVID-19. And these resources we have developed in different languages we are adding. So for example, in a few days, we will be adding the content for Nepal to train community volunteers so that and then you can see on the screen, it has also interactive functions. So it's interactive videos about COVID-19. So when the volunteers or any users watch the video, they can interact with the content, whether they have understood that well or not. And it's important to note that we are still in a developing phase. And in this case, what we have done is we have partnered with our knowledge partner organizations called MES Guide. So this, you can see on the screen, this early childhood education in emergency, that is, we have partnered with the MES Guide. It is a non-government organizations run by academics who have curated all the evidence and the programs to inform our programs, content as well. So what we are doing right now is we are not focusing the contents for children, but we are focusing these contents to empower caregivers. And if you download Math Games at Home, for example, there are books and booklets and also the games that parents and caregivers can play with their children at home when the schools are locked down. Yes, we are very excited. Another great feature of this one is all the content can be created in local languages simultaneously. That really has helped us to reach the most marginal groups and train community volunteers and the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Perna, and thank you to you and your colleagues at VSO for working with us. And we're really excited to see what VSO has managed to do with the app, and creative application of this app and all sorts of other technology for all sorts of very worthy causes, and really making an impact there. So now is essentially the end, and we will take questions. I did notice one question I want to address. Can it be rebranded? As you see from VSO, yes. Yes, that is doable. so we have two options here. You can go now and take the app from Google Play to use the open educational resources that are there. Or you can request your own organizational workspace and subdomain, and that can come with a branded app, and we can rebrand it, take your brand, take your colors, and take your logo, and we can put that all together for you. The app is open source. It's there, it's on GitHub, it's completely open source. If you want to host it yourself on your organization's own servers with your own technical expertise, you are welcome to do that. So that is free of charge. If you want us to host it, then we provide plans that include hosting, support, and your own custom branded app from anywhere between $500 and $1,000 US dollars per month. And there is no limit on the number of users, teachers, students that you put onto the platform. We do not charge per user fees. You can put on as many users as your virtual or dedicated server will handle, and we include those in the plan. So please go to ustadmobile.com, take a look at it, and go and just fill in the form, or we'll create a new form where you can request your own organizational workspace. And that would lead to you getting your own subdomain and your own admin username and password.
So Mike, thank you very much for sharing all this. On your screen, I believe you have a little bit of a window on top of the content. If you can move, there you go. Okay, I thought maybe there was some secret message hiding behind there. So now we know there was not. So thank you very much for all this. Very, very interesting. And you're generating a lot of interest with the audience. So we have a bunch of questions. So I'll just take it from the top and encourage people to keep posting questions to the chat window. The very first question that came in was to initially access the original content. Will your solution work well even if the first phone does not have Wi-Fi access, but rather only mobile data access?
Yeah, mobile data access is completely fine for downloading. When you choose to download something in the app, you can select, the user can select if he or she wants to download it with Wi-Fi only or with mobile data. If you have mobile data, everything works fine. We just have options in there to allow people to block the app from possibly consuming their data allowance. But it's completely up to the user. And we also make sure that it's possible for the user to just download only the content that they really want. So that helps keep the mobile data usage or whatever as low as possible. We don't force people to download the whole bundle of all of Khan Academy, which some other systems do. You can just download the lessons that you need.
I'm afraid I went to that trap the very first time I tried it, and I got a little bit of a warning saying that my phone didn't have enough storage for all the content from Khan Academy. But that was a little bit of a user error, so I'm sure people can get around that.
Yeah, we'll update that. You weren't the only one. Don't feel bad.
Thank you. The next question was, does the system include Wikipedia articles?
So at this point, we don't have a copy of Wikipedia right now in it. There's no reason that we can't add that. It just hasn't been the first thing in the list before Khan Academy and English resources and the like. But we certainly can add that. And actually, we have in the organizational workspace area, we have an option where you can opt to import a link. So you could use a Wikipedia article as that link, and the system would then try to copy it and save it.
Great. There was lots of different questions around content management, and clearly once you sign up, there's a there's a back end of managing everything. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. The specific question was, how do you add your own content or customize the app to make to match your own way of operation?
Sure. Okay, let me take that in two parts. So first about managing content, and then about customizing the app. So on managing content, we support a variety of different content formats. We believe in interoperability and in trying to allow you to use different systems and not trying to lock you in, basically. So if you have existing files, we support EPUB for digital books. We support something called the Experience API, which is supported by about 50-odd different e-learning offering tools like Adobe Captivate, Domino, Articulate Storyline, all that kind of stuff. If anyone has heard of SCORM or SCORM files, which maybe they have if they've use these with other learning management systems. The Experience API was designed by the same people at Advanced Distributed Learning, which is part of the Department of Education, the US Department of Education, as the successor to SCORM files. We support that. We support videos and audio files. And we also support an interesting open source tool called H5P, which is an open source system that allows you to create different content like multi-choice questions, interactive video, which you saw, or the Busy Ants content that BSO has created. A lot of that content was built using H5P. So that's content management. You can upload content. You can associate it with specific classes or specific assignments. You can mark content as inactive. You have the option to decide if content is public or if it's only for registered users. In terms of customizing the app and the flow of the app, so it's, if you don't, out of the box, you get a permission management kind of system where you can decide, who's allowed to create a class or record attendance or add and remove content. If you find that actually there's another feature or something that you want, then we have done this as an open source development projects, with other organizations, where we basically custom build the feature, and the benefit to whoever contracts that is that you don't have to pay for all the other stuff that we've already developed. And then we keep on maintaining things afterwards, and it gets integrated into a more widely used platform. So I hope that answers the question. If there's anything that's not answered, or if anyone has a specific customization or something in mind, then I'd suggest that they either send it on the chat and I can get back to them privately later, or you can submit it also through the form that's on the front page of our website.
There's a lot of great questions coming in here, so we may not be able to go through it. Also, we may need to work with you on a Q&A document that we post. I'm going to ask you one more question, and I have a couple of questions for Perna as well, because I'd like to make sure that Perna gets to talk a little bit about the practical implementation of your platform in the field. But before we go there, and I think maybe you touched on this earlier, I apologize if it's a repeat, but what are the license requirements for the app, and what is the typical cost structure here? Great,
good question. So the license is, it's open source, what's called copyleft. So it means that anyone is free to make as many copies of the app as they want to for any purpose, commercial or non-commercial. The restriction is that if you create your own customized version of the app, if you do your own open source development, that development must also be open source. You cannot go and make a proprietary application out of our open source application. As long as you share your changes, you are free to make any change. You're free to make your own derivative version of the app. The licensing on the app does not affect the licensing of the content. The same, like if you use Google Docs to write a book, that does not give Google any kind of licensing right to the book that you are writing in Google Docs. So the intellectual property of the app has no relationship to the intellectual property of any content that you use through the app. So typically, it's free to try out and play with it, using our own branding on a shared server. We then provide plans, ranging from, at the bottom range, $250 a month, which is for basically support without custom branding with hosting. Up to, for $500 a month, you get your own custom branded app, and you get extra support by phone. And then going up to $1,000 a month, then you can bother us over the weekend. Is essentially the rough pricing structure, but we're flexible, to take into account projects that might start smaller on this kind of stuff. So again, we would urge people to contact us. And as we say, we do not charge people per user. We will not try to say every teacher you add costs an extra $1 per month. We can cope with as many people as the server will handle, which is tens to hundreds of thousands. And we also provide the spec of the virtual server that we include in the medium plans, and on the top end plans, we actually give you your own dedicated server in a data center in Germany that runs as many users as that box will handle.
Okay, thank you very much. So I want to turn to Purna a little bit, and if you can talk a little bit about the VSO implementation in Bangladesh and elsewhere. What are the age groups of the students, and how do you train the teachers and the volunteers? Just if you can share as much as possible about your practical experience.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, even though we can have lots of interactive content for children as well, you can develop one, but VSO's focus has been not directly to the children's learning, but it's through empowering. For example, in Bangladesh, we train community volunteers and these mothers and sisters who are early childhood education facilitator. So we train them. So and there was also a question on the chat box. I looked at whether there has been any study or not. So it was a pilot. So we have a pilot study and testing as we are developing the content. So for example, we involved Rohingya community themselves to generate stories, record songs, and then also the test. So we have a volunteer, community volunteer, and professional volunteers working with them to generate the content like a face-to-face, and it is as a blended approach. So we don't see VSO School app as a panacea, just introducing application, but this is one of the tools that facilitate this mentoring and coaching. But in the COVID-19 context, there was also questions about whether we can use, primarily we thought of education program. Now we are moving as very soon we will be putting together here Washington group of questions training. For example, if you would like to assess children with the disability, that's a tool, that's a training, we would make that available. Another one is gender-based violence training for the community workers, community volunteers in Nepal. And we will be making the interface and all the content in local languages. So at the moment, if you look at VSO School app, it is in English, but in a few weeks, a month's time, we will be increasing content, local content. And VSO, as we work through volunteers, community volunteer, international volunteer, and we have just started now e-volunteers, that the professors and academics who are giving their times to generate this content. So in the future, what we see is that, bringing the knowledge of academics, evidence-based, but practically implementing that program. So for example, in the COVID-19, this response, we are focusing on mental health and psychosocial well-being and storytelling. So we will be also putting together the content. And these are the content targeted at volunteers, caregivers, teacher educators, and teachers and community facilitators.
Thank you very much, Prerna. I do have a follow-up question for you. When you have local content being created, I'm assuming that if you're on a personal computer, you can create content and that can be loaded into the back-end content management system. Can you also use phones in the field to create content?
Yes, VSO School app or the Ustad Mobile allows you to have a basic, so multiple choice question, yes, no questions on your handset if you have admin access. Not the user can create their own content, but you need to have, the admin, privilege to do that one. But also there is also related to that one, it's very important. So we are not just putting and uploading content. There is a rigorous review committee, technical committee. So for example, what we put on in the psychosocial, so I have a team of 10 professional academics and the practitioner who will review as a scientific review content and then feedback and testing as well. So once that stage is passed, then we upload and make those content public. And otherwise we will have a user testing, feedback, and the languages, sensitivity, and others as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go back to Mike for a few more technical.
So I just to say, Frederick, is that co-founder of Merlin has also joined the call here, and she had just put this meaning, and then I quickly showed you the the website of MES Guide, and then probably I will just put it as we speak so that people can see and take a note of that one. And they are the one who are supporting us. We have more than now 40 professors and universities who are part of this movement, who are creating, again, open source these resources, to make us available. So our foundation is the evidence-based resources which we will implement on the ground. And it's a partnership between Ustad, MES Guide, and VSO. It's just a really good harmony and collaboration.
Yeah, you shared the MES Guide link with us earlier, and I posted it to the chat window. And that sounds like an incredible resource for people to look for both evidence and quality resources here. So, and your emphasis on quality and working very closely with academic resources is certainly very, very encouraging. So thanks for sharing. A relatively simple question for you, Mike. Does this system integrate with G Suite single sign-on?
At the moment, we do not integrate with Google Login. It's definitely something that we could do. We would suggest either contact us through our form. If we get good ideas, we can often just implement them. We can put them on our feature roadmap. If somebody's feeling more technically inclined and really wants to track it, please go and look at our GitHub project, and you can post your feature request directly on our GitHub project.
Great. Then one that's a little bit more complex. First of all, somebody saying super cool app, so compliments, and they also had downloaded the app. And as you mentioned, the app needs access to the device's location services to facilitate offline access. How do you ensure user safety?
That's a very good question, and there's a little bit of a context that comes up when that dialog box appears. So first of all, you can deny that request, and the app will continue to function just without the offline content sharing. We are not logging anybody's GPS location or the coordinates or anything like this. You can verify what I'm telling you by looking at our open source code. The reason we need the location is because we're looking for other phones nearby. And hypothetically, if I did want to find somebody's location, if I put my phone in a certain place, then this Bluetooth scanning technique could be used to determine if that phone was around the other phone. Now, as I mentioned, we're not logging that. It's clear there and it's in our source code, and it's also in the dialogue, and we'll try to make sure that the dialogue is as understandable as possible. In terms of in terms of protecting users' data, so the first thing we do is we don't record what we don't need to record, and location is one of those things that we do not record because we really don't have any need to record that. We do, of course, record students' progress and information like this. The data which is stored on the phone is really the same as any other app. It's stored in an area where, unless you root the phone or, specifically try to get around certain protections built into Android, you won't be able to access that database. And it would get wiped if the phone gets wiped by, reporting it lost or something like that. Ultimately, there is a compromise between how much will work offline and trying to protect information on the device, because the system can only work offline if the content and information is on the device. We can only give a teacher access to their reports offline if the information is on the device. We also ensure that the app only synchronizes the data that that particular user has access to. So we limit how much data actually goes to the device. And of course, we use industry standard encryption when the data is being transferred between the device and the server. So I hope that explains a little bit about the permissions and user data management in English. And again, if anyone has further in-depth technical questions, then they're welcome to come to us through our website or our GitHub project.
Well, thank you very much for that. The next question is a little bit of a content question, and I do understand that the system will allow for anyone to create any type of content, and particularly if it's going through some quality assurance, make sure that it's evidence-based and what have you. But I'll read the question, and maybe if there's some examples here you can point to, that would be great. But the question is it possible to develop other material related to gender-based violence programs with messaging on coded languages to potential victims and survivors on how and where to access support services, as well as messaging on how to protect themselves against gender-based violence? Are you familiar with? Have you used this?
Yeah. So we are using Frederick. We are developing modules. So there is already, for example, gender-based violence pocket guides. That's a consortia has developed. VSO is a member of that. But what we found, because that content is in English, therefore we are developing. There is a program in Nepal, and yesterday I just trained our colleagues there, and we are developing this content in local languages to train our local volunteers. And also what it allows us is to have, for example, we can include 360-degree, the video and pictures to do the community mapping as well, just to identify and what are the safeguarding issues or protection issues, how they can report, and the scenarios. So they can watch the scenarios, they can train. So in fact, we are developing the content and module specifically on the gender-based violence in this case. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. There was quite a few questions on how to achieve the skills and mastery for teachers, classroom management, and what are the requirements of a teacher to achieve quote unquote mastery here? Is there training materials either in the app or elsewhere where people can get basic training?
Okay, good question. So we always like to hear, when people are thinking through teacher training, because it's certainly a good sign. Now, We have really worked really hard at trying to make the app as really user-friendly and as intuitive as possible. And the way we do that is we model the app on other apps that users use day to day, like Facebook and YouTube and Google Play. So the content browsing is actually modeled after Google Play. So if somebody could get the app off Google Play, there's a very good chance they'll manage to find the content that they are looking for. The management of students in a class is very heavily modeled after the Android address book. So if somebody has managed to, save their contacts to their address book, they will probably figure out adding, the students to their class the same way they would figure out adding their contacts to their address book. What we found was actually more challenging was the admin side of things. So we really went back and really revamped and redid the user experience from the admin side, and we're excited that we're going to be relaunching that in the next days, and hopefully that makes life a lot easier. And there's going to be a little video for new admins to get them up and running. I'd like to mention we did do user testing with teachers in Lebanon together with International Rescue Committee, with IRC, and with the UX and the human design. We managed to get all, I think there are 10 or so teachers who were part of it were able to complete the tasks assigned without intervention. So if somebody is smartphone literate, we think that there's a very high chance that they, together with anyone around them, will quite quickly pick up how to use the app the same way they use other apps. If the users are not smartphone literate, then this is more of a challenge, because they need to have a basic level of digital literacy, to use a basic Android smartphone. But the same way people have figured out how to use Facebook and YouTube without training, people can. This app is designed to be as intuitive as possible. And we're also looking at possibilities of bundling introduction videos and help guides within the app itself.
Excellent. There's some questions around testing and assessments and exercises. Can you talk a little bit about that? You mentioned earlier you're able to load SCORM compliant content, for instance. So how do you do those kinds of that type of tracking and testing?
Right. So we can load. Well, actually, we don't support the SCORM file directly. If you can export the SCORM file, you can export it to a tin can API file instead. We hope to support SCORM directly soon, but as long as you have the original file, you can almost certainly export it in the new tin can format. Once you have done that, you can go and upload it into the content library. Then you can create an assignment, or the teacher can create an assignment. So the teacher should go set up a class, add the students to the class, and then in the class there's a tab for assignments. When they create an assignment, they can select a number of content pieces that are part of that assignment. They can type out some basic instructions for the students, and they can then set a deadline for that content to be done. And then they will have an overview page where they can see the progress on the assignment for each student.
And what about, is there testing and grading built in, or is that something done separately?
So grading, so testing and grading, so testing is really more about what's inside the content file that you upload or that you create in the app.
Yeah,
Whether
Mike, yes. Go ahead, Mike, then I will comment on this. Thank you.
So if you create a piece of content that has a score at the end of it and is an assessment, then yeah, it can be a test. Of course, you never really know who is actually using the phone. So, you know, it's not a totally secure test, but it could be used for that purpose. In the assignments area, the teacher has the option to grade and send feedback to each student who submitted something. So I'll turn it over.
Just to build on that, for example, we are in the modules that we are developing for the coaching and mentoring, remote coaching and mentoring. So what we are trying to do is develop this content to train teachers, and also followed by like a Zoom and Skype call, and they can just assess. And so we know the assessments as a formative assessment rather than the summative assessment as well. So currently we are focusing on how we can really create the quality content rather than focusing on the assessments per se.
Excellent. Do you, let's see, there's a lot of questions around, where to find materials, and if there's been studies on the impact of all of this. And there's been quite a few postings around the mesh guides. Can you maybe, Paramo, you can talk a little bit more about, your interaction with the mesh guides and how that is a good resource for not only evidence as well as content.
Yes, so the Professor Marilyn Lisk, I invited her. So she is the one who is posting. So, and she has also given her email kindly. So the MES guide is kind of Wikipedia for teachers. So if you visit the MES guide, mesguides.org, if you can just type it up, then I will type it this. And then once you go, the great thing about this MES guide is you can access, it's an open source, and you can automatically translate in different languages. So for example, for your benefit, I'm just posting on the chat box here. If you look at this, and you will see, this is all the evidence. More than 40 academics spend more than 1,500 hours of their time to generate this evidence, and it's open source. And based on that, we have now developed, Marlene will post to you, there is another booklet we have developed to help parents from 0 to 5 years old, just like math games at home. There is another book we have created for parents and caregivers as well. So these are the great resources we have developed. And as I mentioned earlier on, I think it's very important to note there is a technology, but the effectiveness of content will depend on, you need to invest a lot of time to test. You cannot simply copy and paste and send that one, and then in interaction with the primary actors, what they really need. So that's why you can see a delay in our the development, because we are testing, we are piloting, and the feedback loop all the time, and then we just refine those content. And another question, just there was like a instant feedback. So when you develop the interactive video, for example, on COVID-19, and there are 6 questions, so immediately that's the instant feedback you can develop on a S5P. Again, S5P platform is an open source platform. You can generate lots of interactive the activities to assess users' understanding and knowledge about the topic.
Fantastic. There's another a simple question relative to content in Spanish. Do you have partners that provide content in Spanish?
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
So on our side, Khan Academy Spanish is available, which I think is about 20,000 plus maths exercises and videos. PhET is a collection of science and physics simulators that's all available in Spanish, as well as about 20 or 30 other languages. We allow, any kind of content, content can be uploaded in any language that the user wants. If anyone would like to translate the app itself into Spanish, we can also set that up. Just like VSO is kindly working with us on translating the app itself into other languages. we'd be happy to get the app user interface itself translated into Spanish, and it would probably take a translator 2 or 3 days of work on that. There's not that many words in the user interface. So I'll turn it over to Perna.
That's true. Again, as I say, it's an open source, and what VSO is doing, not only national languages, we are translating the application interface via VSO School or Ustad Mobile interface in a local languages, and also creating content in audio formats. And if you look at the COVID-19, you will see sign languages. So we are trying to make it as inclusive as you can. So there will be audio resources for the person with a disability and how they can be safe, and all the resources we have based on, again, WHO and UNICEF and UNESCO and all the content as well. So that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure that this application is inclusive and we can address the inequity in terms of access. Thank you.
So I want to go back. There's quite a few follow-up questions relative to content management and things like that. And I know you can, obviously you can get admin access, you can upload your own content. Is this done kind of on an organizational level, or can you set this up as like can an individual teacher be effective here as well, or do you need to kind of be part of an organization? And you have like a multi-tenancy type of deployment of this organization based?
Right. So it's primarily organization based. So the first thing we would say to a lot of people who have questions is, please do just try it. Come to our website, request a workspace, and do play with it. You have nothing to lose. So that phrase has bad connotations. So yeah, please do try it out. So it's up to the organization about what model they want to use. So for example, as Perna has shown, VSO has a defined process of review and ensuring quality. Organizations could, if they so wish, grant access to other users, which could be teachers, to offer and publish their own content through the system. So it's up to the organization. So the organization should create a workspace, and then the organization should decide what are the rules for this workspace in terms of who can publish.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So just to say, Frederick, in our case, we have controls as a quality control. So the our volunteers and local experts, they generate the content. And of course, there are, like, for example, stories and songs from Rohingya and others. We promote the local contextual content, but just to make sure the content we are delivering are of the high quality. And so we do have a panel that review before that goes to, and we upload on the, just to make sure that not only the content, but we need to make sure like child protection, safeguarding, the language of tone, or, all kind of things. So that's how we also look at not just the technical aspect, but also the language.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much for underscoring that. And also thank you very much to Marilyn for sharing all this information from her end. This is just extremely valuable, and clearly not the last time we're talking about this. Your focus on quality, your focus on a very flexible tool, Mike, is a great match. And I thank both of you for a great introduction to the topic today. And we hope to be able to get back soon and talk a little bit more about it. For those NetHope members that are on the call, look for some more call for interest in working as a group around this topic. I think Perna might be interested in sharing more of this in a kind of member group setting and helping each other in this very, very important space of distance learning. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the audience.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, Patrick. And just to say that I also have a different hat. I'm also representative of civil society organization and humanitarian to the International Task Force on Teachers for Education 2030. I'm a member of EDA committee that is also working on policy briefs and others on COVID-19. So if you have any questions, any ideas, we can really help. So I'm more than happy to bring your voices in a policy debate as well. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity to share our experience. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Perna, for your leadership, and we'll be looking for more of that. So, and thank you to the audience for fantastic interaction today. And I wish everybody a great rest of your day. Please take a minute to answer the few questions we have in the webinar satisfaction poll. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye for now.